Hi, I'm Jenny Brown. Welcome to this week's edition of MFB News. I hope we find you very, very well today and that you've had a great week. It's been really busy actually. We've attended a couple of landlord events. Most recently, yesterday was the National Landlord Investment Show in London, which was absolutely brilliant. It was so lovely to see so many familiar faces and also meet some new faces as well. But for those people that watch this video, and who were at the show yesterday, it was really nice to see you. So thanks so much for taking the time to come and say hello and introduce yourselves in person actually. Now in terms of what we got for you this week, we're going to cover off the latest changes with the lenders as usual. There's been an interesting turn of events on swap rates, which we're going to talk about and also just briefly discuss the kind of likely implications of that. And then what I've got for you is some information on commercial investment mortgages. We don't often go there on these videos, if I'm honest, but there's been a couple of changes. So it feels like the opportune time just to take a moment to look at those and see what's happening there. And then finally, we're really excited to bring back to market a refurb to let product. So I'm just going to talk to you a bit about how that works. It's really, really good product. Okay, now in terms of lender pricing, things are staying largely static, and that's really quite understandable when we think about what's been happening with swap rates. So we've talked about in recent weeks how swap rates have bubbled back up to around just over 4%. So what the lenders have been largely doing is waiting to see what happens. So the reason the swap rates had edged back up is there was concerns in the US over their inflation. They'd kind of missed or underestimated their inflation situations. There was real concerns that the US were going to have to push up their Fed rate, and therefore in the UK we would then need to increase base rate to keep up, so we didn't devalue the pound. Now what's been really interesting is on Monday we noticed swap rates had come down from just over 4% to just over 3.8%, and throughout the day they kind of hovered between 3.8 and 3.7 and kind of ended back up at just over 3.8%, so it stepped downwards. Now the reason for this is because with the Silicon Valley Bank having to be bailed out by the US government, what's become quite apparent and the US have reflected on is the fact that actually it cannot continue to keep pushing up interest rates because the banks over there are simply not in a position to cope with this at the moment. So the Fed have made a statement essentially saying we're not going to keep on pushing up interest rates. So what appears to have happened is this has then rippled across the pond, come to the UK markets, and people are now saying, well, actually, if the Fed aren't necessarily going to keep pushing up their interest rates, then that takes the pressure off the Bank of England base rate, which means that actually maybe things won't need to go up as much as had been previously feared. So really, really good news there. So we're hoping that this is kind of a permanent change and we're back on a downward trajectory again. It was a little bit disconcerting, if I'm honest, to see the rates float back up to over 4% when we've been down at 3.5% after everything that's been going on. Now, is base rate going to go up this month? Now, our view is very much, yes, it is actually still going to go up this month, despite everything that's been going on in the US and the kind of good news this brings for us, essentially. Now, I'm prepared to be wrong on this point, but actually reading the various opinions that are floating around from those people who are economists and really understand this stuff, actually, yes, we are still expecting an increase in base rate later on this month, but that will be the last one. If it doesn't happen in March, it will happen in May, but no more base rate increases for the rest of this year. So we're going to cap out at 4.5%. So that's what's been happening with swap rates. So it just shows how things can really turn on a dime, doesn't it? And I'll report back again next week where I'm hoping that we'll have seen things continue to decrease. It's not a given. Now, in terms of how it's going to affect mortgage pricing, these things aren't instant, okay? So when rates go up, lenders are quite quick to pull rates and reprice upwards because what they can't afford to be doing is lending money at a loss. We don't want lenders to be losing money because they stop lending and we need mortgage lenders to be around. But what takes longer is for downward pricing to filter through. So what the money markets or the lenders are going to be doing now is watching what's going on with swap rates and thinking, well, actually, are we going to go back up to over 4%, or actually is 3.8% where things are, or are they going to come down further? So this is going to take at least really sort of 2 to 4 weeks to wash through the system. So we will obviously keep you posted. Now, in terms of lender pricing changes, actually, because of, like I say, people are just kind of largely waiting at the moment to see what happens, we've seen very, very little movement. So MT Finance have made increases to their rates. Now, these guys are very, very exposed to the money markets. So their pricing is now starting from 5.07, but these lower rates have got very, very large fees. Always watch the fees at the moment. There are more and more products coming to market with the lower rates and the higher fees. There's a place for them, there's nothing wrong with them, but make sure you're not kind of just blindsided by that very, very low interest rate. Do look at the fees as well and do the maths on the overall cost over the term. But rates from 5.07, we talked about MT Finance only a couple of weeks ago. Really, really great lender, very, very niche. can lend to, you know, your sort of typical landlord with 1 or 2 properties in their personal names. They can also lend to limited companies, people with large portfolios. The lady who actually runs MT Finance Buy to Let used to work at Mortgages Business as a broker. She's a wonderful woman. Her knowledge is incredible, and she is someone who's incredibly commercially minded. So if we have a deal, which most lenders aren't able to do for one reason or another, she's the kind of person who will make it her business to wrap her head around the transaction, try and get it over the line. So we're incredibly fortunate to have these guys on side. Now, I've also seen BM Solutions reduce their rates. So they're pricing 2-year fixes from 4.08 and 5 years from 4.48. So, you know, BM Solutions, huge buy-to-let lender, part of Lloyds Banking Group. Nothing racy for these guys, please. Straightforward properties. They can do student lets, actually, up to 5 students on one AST, no locks on doors, on their sort of standard pricing, so that's quite good. But no kind of proper HMOs, no multi-tenancies, no multi-unit freehold blocks, and no limited companies. But, you know, if you fit within those categories of looking for the slightly more traditional properties, their pricing is very good. The other thing we really like about BM Solutions, actually, is their product transfer offering. So what we tend to find is if a client goes to BM Solutions, we very rarely move them to a new lender unless they're looking to refinance and raise money. And the reason for this is that BM Solutions are very good at offering good competitive rates to their existing borrowers, and they have done this for years as well, actually. So they've always pioneered the product transfer piece. So great lender. And lastly, we've seen Virgin make reductions to their rates of 0.45%. So they now have 2-year fixed rates from 4.18 and 5 years from 4.2. Now, Virgin, again, you know, sort of clearing bank type lender, so no limited companies, no HMOs, no multi-units. You know the drill on this by now, I'm sure. But actually, they do have some really nice things in their offering. The thing that we have always really liked about them is they can do day one remortgages against open market value if you can kind of justify why you've seen an uplift in value in such a short space of time. No minimum income requirement is the other thing from Virgin. So in the round, where are we on pricing? So actually, just looking at the numbers, it feels very similar to previous weeks still. So your sort of straightforward deals, your vanilla deals. So personal borrowing, no HMOs, no multi-units, a portfolio of no more than 10 in the background. Variable rates from 4.09, 2-year fixed rates from 3.99, and 5-year fixes from 4.2. Limited companies, and also your HMOs, multi-units and large portfolios, variable rates from 4.49, 2-year fixes from 4.39, and 5-year fixes, well, from 4.29, but actually if you don't want to pay an absolutely whopping fee, then realistically your 5-year fixes are from 4.9% now. Okay, now in terms of rental calculations, what we're seeing is almost weekly a lender come to market saying, we've reduced our rental calculations, and this week is the week of the West Brom, who have reduced their calculations down. So if you're taking a 5-year fixed rate, then the calculation would be 125% at pay rate plus 0.5%. So it's going to be sort of circa 6%, so 125 at around 6% at the moment. If you're taking a shorter term fixed, then it's 125% coverage, assuming the pay rate plus 2%. Would be the calculation there. So they've brought their rental calculation down. Now this is really good. We're seeing lenders do this every single week, and the rental calculations is probably, I would say as a business, the biggest challenge we have in terms of placing clients' mortgages at the moment. The lenders are very keen to lend money. There's an abundance of money to lend. They're all revisiting their lending criteria to try and kind of figure out how to win more of your business, and this is another thing that's going on as well, which will really help landlords out, because like I say, this is the thing that is kind of proving the largest challenge. For those of you who aren't familiar with West Brom, they only lend to limited companies. They're a small lender, right? They haven't got whizzy systems. It's quite a paper-based application. The thing that we love about West Brom, they're a really nice bunch of people, but more importantly, they don't take any personal guarantees when they do limited company lending. So they're very unique in this regard. Now, actually, personally, I don't see giving a personal guarantee as a big deal. If I was taking a mortgage in my personal name, I'd expect to ultimately be personally liable. Why should it be any different if I'm using a company wrapper around the transaction? But some people are really against this. So actually, West Brom has been a really good solution for those clients, so far. So great to see them reduce their rental calculations. I'm sure next week we'll have another lender doing something very similar, and I'll report back on that then. Okay, now commercial investment mortgages. Now this is not something we cover off often on MFB News for no particular reason other than we always try to keep this channel as really very heavily buy-to-let focused. However, There are still landlords looking to diversify in terms of the asset classes that they invest in, and commercial and semi-commercial is very much, you know, on the agenda for these guys. Now, what's been really interesting is really, I think there's been a notable winding down of appetite from the clearing banks, the people who sort of naturally associate with commercial lending, so your NatWest, your Barclays, your Lloyds, those kinds of players. Handelsbanken being another one. So these guys, their appetite to be lending on property broadly is really diminishing, but actually particularly in the commercial space. So what this has done is really kind of left a big gap in the market. So we've seen challenger banks come in over the years. So the kinds of institutions I'm referring to here are people like Aldermore, Shawbrook, Interbay, Alica, to name but a few. So in terms of where pricing is at the moment, you know, it has been, and commercial lending is always the area of lending which is the slowest to kind of come down in times of reduction in rates. But nonetheless, we are starting to see things move a little bit. There's a couple of lenders that have made some changes in the last week to commercial investment mortgages. So first of all, YBS have introduced 2 fixed rate products. They have been doing commercial investment lending all the time, but it's always been on variable rates. But they've actually brought out 2 different sort of tiered products, as it were, for commercial investments. So first of all, if you wanted an interest-only mortgage with them, you can now get that up to 65% loan to value on a 5-year fixed rate at 7.15%. At 75% loan to value, it would be fully amortising, so capital and interest. The interest rate here would be fixed at 6.99%. Now, what I would say about the interest-only offering that they have there is they're still going to calculate the rental calculation essentially on as if it was a full capital and interest mortgage, but they are able to offer interest only. So it's really, really good to see YBS bring in a offering on a fixed rate basis. I think at the moment, while people kind of flirt with the idea of variable rate mortgages, actually the reality is that people just want a bit of guarantee for the time being. So actually fixed rates do still be, despite where the pricing sits, what people are ultimately going for. Now, Shawbrook are another lender who are they are wonderful actually. I do really like Shawbrook. They've had some real challenges on their servicing, which hasn't been great, but you know, they're always really keen to get better. They always learn from their mistakes. So hopefully things will return to normal. And what they've done is they have released some new products in the last week. Now, what they're saying is that for semi-commercial loans over £1 million, they are able to offer rates from 6.49% now, which has come down quite significantly. For loans between 500,000 and 1 million, rates are now from 6.89%, so a slightly higher interest rate for those, I'd say smaller loans, but loans of less than 1 million. They had a minimum loan amount of £1 million for quite a while, so it's good to see them bring in some sort of appetite for a slightly lower loan amount. Now, actually, Shawbrook also, just coincidentally, have also brought down their rates on their buy-to-let offering. So they are now looking at interest rates from 6.29% for specialist buy-to-let loans of between 150,000 and 1 million, and actually an interest rate of 5.69 for large buy-to-let loans of over £1 million. Now, when we're talking about Shawbrook, we're not targeting, the landlord with one semi-detached house in his personal name. These guys are a commercial lender that do buy-to-lets. These guys are looking for the less traditional deals. So layered companies where the shareholding is quite complex, trading companies, larger HMOs, so they don't have a maximum number of self-contained units or rooms on HMOs, that kind of stuff. So we're really, portfolio loans is another one as well. So there's slightly more racy stuff, but it's really good to see them start bringing their pricing down, and let's just hope their service can keep up with that. And last but by no means least, we have been really, really delighted to see Precise Mortgages bring back their refurb to let products. So it went away during COVID. And I guess because Precise, like every other lender, has been so busy over the last couple of years, they haven't really needed to had the resource to bring back this product. But it's back now, which is fantastic. So refurb to let. So you would use the refurb to let product if you were buying a property which was not lettable in its current condition and you planned to keep the property on for the long term and rent it out. Now, what the Precise refurb to let product does is when you apply for the bridging loan, they also pre-underwrite the term mortgage at the back end, which really, I think, for most landlords is the reason this is so popular is because it takes away the uncertainty of, if I take a bridging loan now and I can't get a buy-to-let mortgage at the back end, I'm going to be stuck paying, hideous bridging rates for some undefined period of time. So it gives some real certainty about how you're going to come off the bridging loan. The other thing that's really neat about it is because the property is surveyed both in terms of its current condition and with a schedule of works that you'd have provided, the end value as well. There is a second inspection of the property, but it's not a full valuation fee. It's just a re-inspection where the valuer would go back out and say, yeah, you know, you've done the changes that you said, and therefore I'm happy to continue with my original valuation figure of X amount of money. It also is quite good because it saves on legal fees as well, because the charge is already with Precise Mortgages from the bridging loan. When you exit, there will be a small amount of legal work, but it will be very, very small. And the final point is that when you move on to the term mortgage after the bridging loan period is done, the lender can then increase the borrowing to up to 75% of the new market value. So any capital that you've accrued within the property, within the works that you have done, it means that you can realise that capital back out again as well. So it's a really, really seamless proposition. Is it the right answer for everybody? Not necessarily, actually, and I'll explain to you why. So the actual bridging loan rates with Precise are very, very good. I mean, they're all much of a muchness on the market. The arrangement fee is very, very competitive, and I'll go through that in a second. The reason that I'm not always convinced it's the right answer for everybody is because the term mortgage at the back end is not necessarily the most competitive rate. So when clients come to us and say, okay, you know, I've got this refurb project, how should I finance it? What we will always do is cost up a refurb to let type option for them, but also a traditional bridging loan, remortgaging onto a normal buy to let mortgage at the back end. So probably lower interest rate at the back end, but obviously you've got to pay new fees and new valuation, new legal costs and all the rest of it. So which one works out better? So here's the kind of detail of this. So they have a bridging loan rate from 0.55% per month. That's at the low loan to value tiering. At 75% loan to value rates are from 0.75% per month. Arrangement fee here is 0.75% of the loan amount, which is very competitive. Most bridging loan arrangement fees sit at 2% of the loan amount, so that's very good. Now, when you exit the bridging finance, once you've done the relevant works of the property, the rates you're going to move on to will vary depending on the type of works that you have done. So they have 3 different rates, so standard refurb, energy efficiency refurb, and EPC C+ refurbishments as well. So essentially, the worst case scenario is the rates are from 5.79, but actually if you're on the very green side of things, so the EPC C+, rates are from 5.59%. So, and also there's an arrangement fee on the exit of 2% of the loan amount. So definitely not the cheapest rates on the market. I mean, they're not a million miles away either, so I do think this really has a good place in the market. So other things to note about Precise Mortgages, other than the really great stuff that we've talked about already with regards to the offering on this product, is that they can do HMOs of up to 6 bedrooms, multi-units of up to 6 self-contained units on this product, as well as your normal properties. They can do this for individuals and SPV limited companies. Nothing racy with the companies, please. These are clean SPVs. There's no layering, no more than 4 shareholders as well. Other things are the people involved in the transaction. There's no maximum number of buy-to-lets and there's no minimum income requirements. So all in all, a really, really good offering coming to market. And that's me for this week. Thank you, as always, for having a watch or listen, however you choose to digest this. We do appreciate you taking the time. And as always, if you do have any questions, we would love to hear from you. 0345 345 6788. It looks like we are through the worst of the weather. I've obviously just jinxed it and now it's going to be snowing tomorrow, isn't it? But I think we're through the worst. And actually, I'm sitting here recording this video at 6:30 in the morning and it is daylight outside. So I think we're over the worst of it now and we're on the home stretch towards spring, thank goodness. I will see you again same time next week. Until then, please look after yourselves.